Hello, all you gorgeous souls out there who just can't get enough Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. You've come to the right place. Let me just start by saying that. We are Justice League Revisited, the unofficial companion podcast of one of the greatest animated series of all times. I'm one of your co-hosts, James Enstall, host of Geek to Me Radio. On the other side of the Zoom screen, looking wonderfully radiant as she sits there ready for her speaking engagement this episode, the one, the only voice of Wonder Woman, Susan Eisenberg. How are you?
I'm well, and I like that you said unofficial because we don't want to get into trouble.
No. The last thing we need is David Zaslav calling us up going, hey guys,
Oh, yeah. Holy cow. That would be terrible.
But then at least you would know about us.
I know. So and I think, the word is spreading.
Yeah.
I mean, people are finding us. I mean, we are, we're getting known out there, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, no, we're hanging in there like a hair on a lollipop. Are you kidding me? Come on. This is, we're
good one.
The little engine that could this podcast. But no, it's great because we have had so many people mostly due to your work at the cons, because you've got that QR code out on the table now. You're telling people, hey, have you heard of this? And you told me that a lot of people are actually saying now, yes, I have heard of it actually. And
yeah,
so
I was surprised. I was really surprised. The last con I did in Tampa, so many people were like, yeah, I've been listening to it. I love it. It's, I listen to it when I go to work and drive home from work. And I'm like, made me so happy.
Fantastic.
And they like us together, which is sweet. Because we like us together, but you never know
right.
what other people are going to think.
Right, you just don't know. We're like the Lenny and Squiggy of Justice League podcasts because everyone likes us. No.
Or Laverne and Shirley.
Or Cagney and Lacey.
Oh.
Which was Carl Lumley's first acting gig on Cagney
That's
and Lacey.
Right.
How about
That's
that?
right. Oh,
Bringing it all full circle.
Look at you. Look at you. So do you want to tell the kids who's on today?
Yeah, so we've got a special guest. This is a writer, actor, and producer in his own right. People, if you remember the RIP to the DC Universe, which was a great app that I was able to stream all these fantastic DC episodes and read comic books on. He was one of the hosts of the DC Universe, basically had its live show with a lot of interviews and everything like that. Hector Navarro is joining us, which I'm terribly excited about, to have another person with a host mentality on. So I'm sure he's going to bring some great insights about this episode.
Oh, he will. And I thought you were going to say, not host, I thought you were going to say geek, like a fellow geek.
Well, of course, that too, yes.
You two are going to be able to just, that secret language that I don't speak.
The great things about the DC Universe is those shows, they had those produced shows that had the interviews. All those people, you could tell they were fans,
Huge.
Which I loved. And that's why I'm excited, because obviously Hector wouldn't have been on the show if he wasn't a fan, and he certainly wouldn't be doing our show if he wasn't a fan and a friend of yours. And he is
a friend of mine, and we met because he interviewed me along with the panel of people on DC Universe, and it was just he just made such an impression on me. I just thought he was the loveliest guy, and sweet and kind, and so knowledgeable about this world. Hey, that sounds like you. And so when I saw him in Tampa, and I said, do you want to do the podcast? And, he didn't hesitate. He's like, yes, which one, what do we do? And he signed up right away. So we're thrilled to have him. And, if we want to send Gary to the, green room.
Yeah. Gary. Oh, don't. Dude, those were my Pringles. Come on, Gary. I had my name on the outside of the can. But just leave him right there, and that's fine. Could you go get Mr. Navarro from the green room, please? Yes. Yeah, I would finish chewing the Pringles first. Otherwise, you're going to spray him. It'd be like walking into a wood chipper for him. Come on. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks,
All
Gary.
Right. Gary's going to go get him. Green room's opening. There he is. So joining us now, part of Heroes Reforged, one of the hosts of Dork Souls podcast. He's an actor, producer, writer. Welcoming to the show, Hector Navarro. Thanks for joining us.
It is a pleasure, James. I'm so happy to be here. One of my favorite things in my whole career is that I have had the chance to meet so many of my childhood young person heroes. One of them, is, of course, is Susan, and she's been an absolute delight and such a friend and such a pal. So anytime, I know that Susan probably gets this all the time, but like there's a couple people in my professional life that if I'll happen to run into them again and they go, "Oh, Hector, hi," I'm like, "How do you even remember my name? This is so wild. This is so cool." But I'm so happy to report, meet your heroes when it comes to Susan Eisenberg, because she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Truly, truly great. So now that we have all that gushing out of the way, we can talk about this nerdy episode.
Well, thank you. I mean, that is a very sweet thing for you to say. And it's nice to see, James, people do like me.
I've never disputed this fact.
Susan wanted to bring me on to kind of balance it out a little bit, I guess. To kind of balance it out.
Sheesh. No, I remember when we met because it was the DC Universe interview.
That's
and
right.
It was like a round table of wonderful hosts. And it was just, I have photos still. I sent one to you this morning, and I sent one to James because that was such a sweet encounter. And I have had the pleasure of seeing you and Abby, your better half, your other half, I should say, Abby. So many times. We just saw each other in Tampa, actually.
Yes. Yeah. The convention world, it's a whole nother world, and it's been so cool and really, really, I mean, one of the best things about it is you do get to reconnect and see people, that you might not often run into. So that's been really great. Yeah. I remember that, Susan. It was a really cool set, a really great job.
It was.
And that run of interviews and different videos and shows that we were making, I got to, of course, meet Susan, but I also, me and my co-host, we got to meet Andrea Romano and talk to her, and you know what I mean? Like just the absolute greatest of all time, and Kevin Conroy, and it's such special moments with some of these folks that I'm going to cherish forever. And it's so cool that I'm able to say that. But it's really funny because we reconnected at this convention and Susan said, "Would you want to come on the podcast?" As though the answer would ever be no. I'm like, of course I would, talking about one of my favorite shows ever. And then she messaged me not too long ago. She goes, we're going to do this episode if you want to come on for the greatest story never told. James, it's my favorite episode of Justice League Unlimited.
Really?
It is my absolute favorite episode. And I thought that I had told Susan. I was like, oh, I feel bad now that I was haranguing her about this episode. But I didn't. It would just happen to line up,
Perfect.
Hera has looked down upon me favorably. So there you go.
It's so interesting because we'll introduce the episode, but not. I love Booster Gold, and we'll get more into it, but not one of my
Susan's
favorites.
Like, not one of my favorites. I know.
No,
I know.
Because it felt like, talk about a standalone episode that just was like, huh?
Yeah.
It confused me, but I have questions, but we can get to those after we introduce the episode.
Sure.
And let me just say right off, the DC Universe, as soon as they announced that was happening, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to sign up for this. I was so excited to have it. I would flip through the comic books that they had online there, and it got taken away far too soon because the show that you guys did I saw those interviews with Andrea Romano and everybody.
It was great.
It was a lot of fun to watch, and I missed that app. I know they rolled it into HBO Max, but having it as its own standalone thing was such a highlight. I think that's when society peaked, honestly. Yeah. And it's just gone downhill since then.
No, but it was such a gift to the fans, because all the hosts were fans. Yeah. Like they were super smart about it, but they were fans. And it was just, I thought it was a perfect gift for the fans to have. And then it was, why can't we have nice things? Why was it taken away?
I still listen.
And it was a good gig for you.
It was a great
gig for the hosts.
Selfishly, absolutely, it kept me employed. But you're right. You guys are right. I think it was. I like to talk about. People still come up to me and they talk about DC Universe. People still come up to me and they go, "Those shows are really, really cool because of what you're describing, Susan. The fan element, the fact that we were fans." And I like to think of it as, I just think that they were ahead of the game a little bit. They were ahead of the curve because that was really led by people at DC themselves, like DC Entertainment, DC Comics. They were really leading the charge and they were producing that stuff. And I think that they knew, or they had correctly assumed, like DC fans want all the DC stuff in one place.
Yep.
And they were right. And I think that it took the parent company a few years to catch on and go, yeah, we should fold that into the other thing we're doing. and this will just be a tab on HBO Max, and then it turned into Max, and now it's back to HBO Max. But like now there's a DC, sort of section. But it really was, I think DC themselves, DC Comics and DC Entertainment, they were sort of, I guess, tired of waiting around, for lack of a better phrase, because I think they could see sort of other companies and Netflix and all these different places kind of collecting all of their content. And they were going, well, we have the DC library and people love this stuff. And so, that's what I like to think, is that they were just ahead of the curve a little bit. And but I appreciate all those kind words. That's really, really great.
Of course. Yeah. And for those of you who are wondering, we are talking, as they said, the greatest story never told. This is the 7th episode of the first season of Justice League Unlimited, aired on 9/11 of 2004, not the other 9/11. 2004 is when it came out, written by Andrew Kreisberg, directed by Dan Reba, with an incredible voice cast that we'll get into here shortly. But Susan, not a fan. Hector, big fan. I'm Baby Bear on this one because I liked it just right. It's not overly one of my favorite, but it's certainly not the bottom of the heap because I'm a Booster Gold fan for sure. I think if I may state my case, Your Honor, if I can try and defend my position, I'll allow
it. If I can approach the bench, please.
Yes, approach.
I think that and I'm curious about this, and I want to get into the conversation with you guys. And I think I'm picking up what Susan is putting down, which is this episode is just so out of left field. It's so far out of nowhere. And I think that is the reason I love it, is it has this weird underdog spirit. And it has this, for me, I don't think it was my first exposure to the character of Booster Gold. I think even being a comic book fan and watching the DC superhero cartoon shows, I think even then I was aware, like, there's this character created by Dan Jurgens from the 80s, and he's sort of a more comedic character, and he's a part of DC Comics, and he pops up now and again. He's been on the Justice League, and he pops up. But I think this cartoon really, again, I've said it so many times, but the makers of this show, the people behind the scenes on this show, the writers and the producers and the directors are so good. They were so good at distilling any cool thing about DC Comics, any interesting thing about those stories, distilling it to its perfect essence and being able to present it in a way that you can watch this 22-minute story and basically know everything you need to know about this character. Now, have you seen all of his adventures? Certainly not. Like, did you see him reach his full potential? No. But it's such a great introduction to this weird little corner of DC. And my thing is, the thing I love about it is it has this underdog spirit. And when I saw it, I remember feeling like nobody else knew about Booster Gold. And I remember feeling almost validated as a fan, like, I have this great comedic, and it is genuinely funny. I forgot. This episode has the through line of, I thought you were Green Lantern. Right. And it's funny.
It is
I forgot
so funny
how many times they bring that up. It's so, and to the payoff at the end where the doctor, she goes, "Excuse me, Green Lantern," to mess with him. I'm like, that's good. It's very good comedy writing. Or the joke where Jon Stewart says, we've already got 2 stretchy guys down there. We've already got Plastic Man down there. We don't need 2 stretchy guys. Right. It's so funny.
And I love when Skeet says maybe they needed a vase.
Maybe they needed a vase. Squeaky wheel, bud.
I loved it.
It's Jeremy Piven as the elongated man part of the cast. It definitely has the comedic side to it. But the reason, truly, this is my favorite episode is because I am a sucker for the trope, classic, cliche storyline of the fool that becomes the hero, the fool that steps up, the court jester that is actually the knight in shining armor, the guy who you will never expect and who frankly is a very flawed character. And I think that there's little pieces. This Booster Gold, he's obviously interested in things that real heroes are not interested in. Fame and money. How much did you pull last year before taxes? Like, he's interested in endorsement deals, and that's Booster Gold. But even reading comic books a little bit before then, and especially after this, is one of the things. Another thing I love about this episode is that I think it inspired DC Comics proper to go, you know what? We're underutilizing Booster Gold. Let's give him a new series. And there was a series that came out. So this episode aired 2004. And comic books, we know, are much quicker to produce than an animated series. But just a few years later, 2007, a new Booster Gold comic book series started. And in that comic series, the whole premise was like, everybody thinks he's the fool. characters like Batman, all these characters really look down on him. They don't respect him because he's not worthy of respect. But actually, because he's from the future and he has time travel in his storyline, this whole comic series is about him time traveling throughout DC history and like saving lives and doing things that nobody will ever know that he did. And he becomes one of the greatest heroes, but completely anonymously. And it was almost like that's the point of the character, to present you a character who is a dick. He's a misogynist. He's only, he has bad views about women. He's only in this for the wrong reasons. But then have that character step up. I can get chills thinking about it. I'm getting chills right now. My garage is a little cold. But have that character step up and prove he can be just as heroic as some of the other characters that we love, your Wonder Womans and your Supermans and your Batmans, and then albeit take away all of the glory. He will never be known as a hero like Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, but he still is, he's doing the heroic acts. And so that's what I love about this episode. But I think what I wanted to ask Susan is like, I know that Susan and James, when you guys started this podcast, part of the reason was to have Susan revisit the show and sit down and actually watch a lot of the show, maybe episodes that Wonder Woman wasn't in, things that she didn't record, things that she hadn't seen since she recorded it. And I'm so curious to know like where she is in the show and in the storyline right now and how she's feeling about these characters and the larger world. And like, if anything's, I'm sure things have changed, but where is Susan's headspace right now? And then this weird episode comes in out of nowhere, this comedic episode, and you're like, right, but I want to get back to the larger storyline and the larger building of everything that's happening that a lot of Justice League Unlimited eventually gets to. So, Susan, if I can ask, how are you feeling about this revisit of the entire show up to this point before we even discuss the booster gold of it all?
Well, Hector, let me lay down. I've become just this massive fan, massive. And I'm so grateful I have James by my side because there's so many things I don't know about the universe, right? And so much about these characters I don't know. And the gift and why we wanted to do it was because we knew we would each bring something to the table and it would complement, we would complement each other. Yeah. So it's made me a bigger fan than I was. I mean, when you're doing the show and I've been so, public about it, I was so nervous most of the time. And it was definitely enjoyable. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but it was also, there was so much anxiety around the experience. And now I can just look back and have conversations with Dan Reba, which I wasn't having back in the day. Right. We were separated by glass, and other than a smile or a, how are you doing or good to see you, you didn't really have conversations with the producers and writers and directors. And so that's been a true gift. I mean, but I would say I'm just a bigger fan than I ever was. Yeah, and that's great. And it's just been joyful, like experiencing it with James because he was always a fan and a super fan. And, having some of the guests we've been able to have on, and like we had Paul Dini on, and just seeing, I was joking with James because in the beginning of our interview with Paul, I said, okay, listen, you're going to have to do most of the talking because I don't really know much. And I did not shut up in that interview. And I said to James, I think I robbed you of some of your Paul Dini time. But just watching James's face as he was talking to Paul and asking, some really great questions, and they have their own language that they can talk to about all this stuff. But so that it's been joyful revisiting it. And when James and I talked about it a couple of years ago, it was like, hey, you want to do a show? And it's given us so much. I mean, the fact that other people are enjoying it just couldn't make us happier. That's awesome.
And then this Booster Gold episode has to come in and ruin your flow. Sure. Totally ruin it. Yeah.
I loved, first of all, I find the character really interesting, and I love how flawed he was, and that's all really interesting to me. And I love Tom Everett Scott, who who voiced Booster, and he sat across from me, and I had such a crush on him the whole time. I could barely concentrate on my lines, but I didn't understand. It was like it was such an odd. It was so odd because you have all the League fighting this thing that is like, what is I had totally forgotten this episode.
Yes,
and what are they all doing? And it was supposed to be like the worst threat ever.
Yeah,
and then it's all like wrapped up in 22 minutes, and then Mr. Gold is off on his own fighting this other massive threat that could end civilization. So it just felt weird, and it bothered me that Batman didn't know at the end that that he did good, that Booster had done good, and
Batman is a mean boss in this, which is very funny. But I don't, again, to defend the sort of like just a brief snapshot of this character. I think that if there was a follow-up to this, I think that if Booster Gold did have this meeting with Bruce Wayne, Batman, and then Martian Manhunter, read the scans.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Bruce Wayne is
it's
Batman?
Bruce Wayne. It is. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Hector, we've tried not to divulge the secret identities because we don't want to ruin the illusion for Susan.
That's true. Yeah. Wonder Bruce doesn't sound as good as Wonder Bat, so we'll keep it Batman. So it's Batman.
Okay, fine,
You're right.
Fine.
Correction.
Sorry.
I said corrected.
Yeah, Wonder
you're
Bruce
right,
sounds like a Eurovision magic show.
Yes,
Wonder Bruce.
right.
So.
Wonder Bruce. Now we welcome to the stage the amazing Wonder Bruce. No, it's Wonder Bat, which, by the way, I feel like we got a little bit of a moment. I feel rewatching the episode, I went, I wonder if Susan's going to clock that there's when Diana calls in to Jean Jones saying, it's crazy down here. There's a brief moment where like Batman Bruce Wayne swings by to Scooper before this massive destruction happens. And I thought, oh, that's very nice. It's a little romantic.
I did notice that, but
Very cute.
I couldn't get past like my voice coming out of Superman. And
oh my gosh.
Composite Batman, you mean?
Yes. What is
Susan,
that?
Susan, did you remember that did they even, I mean, so many questions. Did they even tell you in the script that's what was happening? Or did they just say, here's a line that Wonder Woman has to say, I'm fine, get back to crowd control? Like, do you remember?
It was explained. I'm sure it was explained in the script. I'm sure it was, because that's just I'm sure that it was written as like composite Superman or Batman.
Right.
But
because it's very out of character for Diana, for her to say, get back to crowd control. That was Batman coming through, I feel like. But you didn't remember while watching this episode, so that was a nice little surprise.
Totally. And it was
great.
Wacky. It was just wacky. And, of course, we didn't see the pictures. We recorded before we had picture, right? So,
absolutely.
It wasn't like we were recording to the picture. But, yeah, it was just wacky. It was...
Yeah. A great reveal where you only see half of the character of Superman, and Booster Gold's like, Superman got hit. Superman, are you okay? And he gets up, and then the ear, and then
Great. It's so great.
That's composite Batman. That happened in an episode of an issue of World's Finest.
Yes,
from the early 70s, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the exact issue.
You might be right.
For some
but
reason,
the point is,
259 jumps out, but.
Well, we might have to look that up.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to Google it.
Yeah. Susan is correct, though, is that it's wacky. It's one of those weird comic book things that when you get into this stuff and you do the research and you find out these old, I'm sure there's a cover somewhere of like a half Superman, half Batman. And it's so bizarre and so weird because comics are wacky. They're weird. And what's great is that I think it's such a goofy idea that the creators of the show never tried to build an entire episode around it. They never tried to do a serious version of that story. They just went, this is going to be a weird moment where they're fighting a wizard who can combine characters. That's the explanation. And so these three characters get combined into one, and then they get back into the fray. Just a quick little comic book reference, but like we can't get into it. It's too weird.
Right. It's even too wacky for us. But so the setup of the episode.
Yes.
The structure of that, it works for you completely and totally.
Yes. And that's a great question. I think that it works for me because it feels as though it's like it's almost like try to think of an idea or an episode. It's almost like in the 80s, they did this in one episode of Star Trek. And eventually it became the inspiration for a newer animated series that just wrapped, Star Trek Lower Decks. They did a whole episode where instead of focusing on the captain, on Patrick Stewart, on all those characters that are the top of the food chain, they went to the lowest decks of the ship, and it was just a couple of people that are working there. That's sort of their job and what happens. And then one of them lost a friend on another ship through a battle, and they heard about it. And it's all that sort of like the mundaneness of it if this is happening, if this is the big battle, if the Justice League is fighting Darkseid, if the Justice League is fighting, Superman is fighting Doomsday, what is happening to all the other characters if they're there? Is there anything else happening on the sidelines? Are there any other stories that are interesting? So for me, the framing and the setup works, I think, also because as a comic book reader, you're so used to this sort of thing happening all the time. And really, if this show, Justice League Unlimited, was catering to not comic book fans, I don't think this would work. I think they would have to do a whole episode about Mordru the Mystic. Who is this guy? Who's Mordru? Mordru. Who is this character? Where does he come from? What does this villain want? Is he just going insane? Is he just losing his powers? What's happening? Losing control? Where are these characters getting pulled from? Who are all these? Who are Hawk and Dove and Vibe and Elongated Man and all of these other? Who is Shining Knight? Who are all these random characters that are showing up? That the Justice League is it seems like this is a big battle. In a world where this show is for somebody who's never read a comic book, this episode, the setup feels like it would be Avengers Endgame. Like it would be the big final battle of a massive, group of characters. But I think because the show is keeping comic book readers like me in mind, it definitely plays with, okay, you're used to this. So you know what this is. You're familiar with this setup. But instead of showing you what we could spend an episode or 2 episodes, what we could spend all of this time and really digging into the epicness of this thing, we're going to pull a 180. We're going to do something very comedic because we're going to highlight a character who really could not work in that context. Booster Gold, you can't ignore the comedic side of that character either. Now, one of my favorite things about Booster Gold is before this episode aired, this happened in the 90s. In the comic books, Superman was killed. He died. And one of the most brilliant things they did is before Superman died and this big monster called Doomsday was marching his way towards Metropolis and they were going to fight, Booster Gold showed up and he was deadly serious because he's normally a comedic character. But when he showed up and he, being from the future, he knew that was the day that Superman was going to die and he tried to prevent it. And he named the creature because he knew from history, from his newspapers and news recordings that the creature was named Doomsday. He showed up and he gasped and he was in shock and he went, "It's Doomsday. He's here." And that name was actually the thing that caught on. So it's the cyclical loop. And Booster Gold in this little moment in the comic books was right in the center of something very serious, a big event. But everything up to that point, he's very much a comedic character. Again, it's that fool who has to step up and then he does something truly heroic. And I think this episode, you couldn't do a purely serious Booster Gold, at least not at first. For this first introduction, I feel like you have to acknowledge he is a dumbass. He comes from the future and he's a fraud. That's my favorite part of the episode, when he's actually admitting, like, I'm a fraud. I came from my time because I failed there. And they didn't go too far into it, but he was a professional athlete in the future, like a football player, and then got caught and ousted because he was betting on his own game. So he's this really, like, he's very ashamed of his life there. And I think he failed his father, who was sick, and then his father passed away. And the best he could do is he got a job as a janitor working in a superhero museum. And it's in that museum that he gets the idea, I'm going to steal this super suit. I'm going to steal this super ring that lets me fly. I'm going to steal this time machine. I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to become famous. And I'm so much smarter than everybody from the past because I'm from the future. But turns out he's still the dummy. So the whole framing, I think, is really perfectly suited for Booster Gold. It's not really a story about the Justice League. Right. Which is weird. So it's weird. It's weird. You're right. But it's also, Justice League Unlimited. We get to a point now. 100%.
But right? Usually they're intertwined with us.
That's very true.
They're not it's like Hawk and Dove. It was with Wonder Woman.
Yes, I mean, you're right. There's a connection there. And totally. Booster doesn't have it because he's such a loser. He has at least, again, not at first. Now, I'll try to make you happy, Susan, eventually in those comic books at least. And like I said, I think that if Booster Gold had his own focused episode and this show went on for many more seasons, there would be a really great story arc of maturity and change. And in the comic books, it sort of happened because it wasn't happening with an animated series. But at one point when Booster Gold is off doing all of these missions and he's not getting any recognition for it, you're actually right, Susan. It is Batman who finds out. and Batman, who recognizes his heroism and sort of respects him for it. And they get that nice, they sort of almost make up in a way. But we didn't have time in this episode. But I'm sure that if Bruce, I'm sorry, Batman, if he had that meeting with Booster Gold after the fact, that's sort of like, what's the postmortem, hey, you left your crowd control position, that he would go, I know, Batman, but there was a scientist and you can check the readings and there was a spike in interdimensional energy, and John Jones or somebody would go, he's correct. He's right. He's right, Batman.
How would he do it? How would he do it? Hector, was that a little bit
correct,
of an
Bruce. It was a little bit. I can't even come close.
It slipped in there though. I heard it, Hector.
I know. My favorite Carl line to try to say is, it's from one of the earliest episodes when Martian Manhunter is lying about Batman being dead because he's fighting the white Martians and he gets caught behind a door and then and everyone goes, no, Batman died. Martian Manhunter goes, there's nothing more we can do now. That's this beautiful, like, there's nothing more we can do for him. That's my best Carl Mumbly is
done.
That, but it's
well
terrible.
Done,
it's awful.
Sir.
To your point, though, there's you mentioned the Star Trek episode. I know Susan loves it whenever I can reference Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So there is a great episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in season 3, I believe, called The Zeppo. And it's there's another, the Hellmouth is opening, Giles and Buffy, and they're all trying to stop this thing from coming through. Willow's helping. Xander is the ordinary friend. Xander has no superpower. Xander is just, and he ends up getting involved with this other side storyline that these people are actually going to summon this demon, and he alone has to stop this from happening. It's a fantastic episode that really highlights Nicholas Braden as Xander. And so there, that's
while
what
the
my mind
A-listers, exactly, while the A-listers are over there doing the A-list thing, there's other characters involved in this. Yeah, I love that.
Okay,
so,
well,
yes.
if you guys are going to bring up Buffy and
Star Trek,
I'm going to bring up Guiding Light.
Please.
When Reva Shane was, when they, what did they do with her, James? You know what they did with Reva. She was like, what's it called when you make somebody, like 2 of them?
You clone them.
Yes. The clone story.
Yeah.
The clone story. I think everyone knows it. I think everyone, we at first hated it. And now that some time has passed, I think there's a real appreciation for that clone story.
Just like the Marlena possession story on Days of Our Lives. Looking back, people remember it fondly. At the time, people were like, what?
Like, what the heck is this? Yeah, you're right. Okay, let's, all right. I love how Star Trek always weaves itself into everything.
There's even a reference in this because Booster gets on the teleporter pad and he goes, energize, and the tech goes, doofus, as he's teleporting off.
Yeah.
Because there's such a crossover between the fandom,
Absolutely.
like find me any of those writers that didn't like Star Trek wrote.
Stan always talks about how much he loves Star Trek and stuff. And
loves it.
I'm assuming Andrew, who wrote this one, was a Star Trek fan as well.
Had to be.
I'm sure. No, but I love that Susan is like a little bit averse to this because it's like it's not the main characters, and she's absolutely right. And I think that's one of the reasons I love this episode so much is because it is not the ultimate Justice League episode, but it's this weird little stepchild. It's this unloved thing. It's this underdog thing. And the show should not pivot and become about Booster Gold. And thankfully it doesn't. And I feel like he doesn't really have a major appearance for the rest of the series. I think that the show, sort of rightly focuses on the rest of these characters. But the other thing I do love about this episode is that as much as we love Superman and Batman, they're sometimes a little overexposed, those two. They get all the stuff. They get all the everything. They get all the video games and TV shows and cartoons and movies and everything. Video games, I know. And we need more Wonder Woman, certainly. We need more Hawk Girl, and we need more Martian Manhunter. But what I love about this series is that all of these wonderful, geeky people that were making the show and writing it, this episode feels like they kind of got to a point where they could do anything from DC Comics. They could, with the Justice League characters and with the Justice League Unlimited and the Watchtower and those, that organization as a backdrop, they could jump around and highlight any weird, fun, interesting, cool, epic character or story from DC Comics history. They could, and there's a lot of DC Comics themselves that kind of did that same tradition. DC Showcase was one of them where they would just try things out, a little short story, 2 stories in one comic book issue. And that's how you get a lot of like the first appearances of what would go on to become more popular characters and more interesting characters, because these writers and artists back in the day were trying stuff out, and it made it so that there were so many characters in DC Comics that you could be reading a Justice League comic book and really anybody could pop in and become a major character and can focus on that. And I think this episode is the writers and the producers of it sort of flexing and going, we have a full-blown, fully lived-in DC universe in our cartoon series. And it still hasn't really happened in live-action film. We're only just now getting it. It really hadn't happened by a competitor either. I mean, I've talked about this before, but Justice League and the shows leading up to this are still the gold standard of sort of a shared universe of superheroes. Marvel took so many different things from this playbook. So in 2004, this is them cracking their knuckles and going, we could do any storyline that comes from DC Comics and do it in a tight 22 minutes. And then next week we'll be back to Wonder Woman and Superman and Batman and all the rest. And then jump over here and do this and then do that and then do this and then do that. So
and
that's
fair enough, because
yeah.
I totally appreciate that aspect of it. And I do appreciate, I mean, certainly because of Unlimited, the 7 of us or 6 of us, once Hawkgirl, left.
Yeah.
Obviously we're sharing a lot of screen time with other people and not working as much. And that I totally get. And there are so many wonderful characters to explore. I guess my beef with this episode was I didn't understand the emergency.
Absolutely.
Like, who is this character?
It's
and
all
why
for
is there,
comedy.
It's
all for comedy. Absolutely. Yes.
The world's about to end over on the left. And then, oh no, the world's about to end over on the right. And never the two shall meet. And it was a little silly. But But I did appreciate the humor, and I did appreciate Booster Gold and that whole story because I thought it was very, very well executed. Mm-hmm. I really did.
And this might be sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, Susan, you're absolutely right. And the other thing I do love about this is that it doesn't treat the main or sort of more important storyline as too precious. It treats it in a comedic way. We have the composite Superman moment with that weird little bit. We have earlier in the beginning when the villain shows up, it cuts to John Jones at the Watchtower and he describes who he is. And he says, it's Mordru. Oh no. And Booster Gold goes, you sound nervous. Like they're making a joke about the fact that this is the ultimate threat, the biggest threat in the DC universe. And almost in a funny way, when this happens in movies, it's characters taking their glasses off and going, my God, that kind of cliche response to it.
It's a bad week to have given up smoking.
And 2 weeks from retirement. It's doing all of those moments just so that Booster Gold can kind of be the doofus in the middle of it. But yes, it almost plays up the epicness of it even more than regular to show how much of a doofus or how out of his element Booster Gold is. I mean, the way that this episode literally wraps up, is ridiculous. Elongated Man saves the day. Elongated Man, and then they don't tell you how or what he does. It's just, it's Green Lantern going, boy, I'm glad you were here. And he goes, I'm just glad I stretched at the right place at the right time. Like, it's like a South Park ending. It's a little joke of like wrapping things up and like, ha 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 ha, we did it. It's unserious. It's very, very unserious. And I think I like it.
When you think, James, of this episode, is that what you feel about it? What? Because you were like, you like it.
No, I do like this episode. And like I said, it just the right amount. Not I don't like, it's not my favorite, but it's certainly not, I wouldn't put it at the bottom of the pile either. But I think that's one of the reasons they use Mordru is because I was kind of looking at this analytically, preparing for the podcast, and I was thinking, boy, he's a Dr. Fate enemy. And I looked through the cast list and I kept looking at the appearances. We don't see Zatanna. We don't see Dr. Fate. We don't see any of the magic people. These are all, so we've got Superman, we've got Green Lantern. We've got the only magic wielder we had was Thunderbolt. Was the only magic person who was ever shown, which I think that was just to say, okay, this is a bigger threat. And it kind of kept the focus over there without explaining exactly, because he doesn't even get a voice. We don't have a voice actor for Mordru. That's how, air quotes, unimportant he was. He's not, I'm using air quotes because he needed to drive that part of the story to find out why isn't anyone else noticing what's happening over here.
Yeah, I think you're right, James. I feel like that's so true. That's a great observation I didn't even clock either, is that he's normally a magic bad guy, a magic threat. and all the heroes are your very standard, very powerful superheroes. They're calling in Captain Atom. These are all big, muscular men, and they have a lot of powers, and they can do all this stuff. But it's not bringing in the experts like your Dr. Fate or your Zatanna. And I also think, too, I'm sure that if anybody could have made this comic book character, Mordru, the villain, an interesting character with a great voice, I'm sure the writers of Justice League Unlimited could have done it. But I also, as a comic book fan, I look at that character, I look at other characters, and I go, yeah, but this villain is not as interesting as Darkseid or Mongol or Vandal Savage, one of my favorite characters in this show. Really interesting villainous characters that they grab from the comic books and they really go into depth. Or Lex Luthor, all these amazing bad guys. And I'm like, I don't think Mordru is that guy. Even as a comic book fan, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't read the best Mordru comic book storyline that we missed out on. But he seems a little bit like a throwaway villain. Oh, he's very powerful magically. Great. We'll use him in the background. We know that Superman, one of his only vulnerabilities is that he is just as vulnerable to magic as like Batman or Wonder Woman. He does not like impervious to magic. Great. We'll just use that as the big threat. We got to we have to bring everybody in. It's the biggest deal in town. But it's just because they didn't, they know that we're going to save a voice actor and really great writing and a really interesting story for another better villain that that I think that they do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I looked it up too while we paused there for a moment. I was able to check. I was a little off. It's actually World's Finest issue 142 from 1964. It's the first appearance of Composite Superman. But the cover, I was very close on the cover. It's actually issue number 283, which has a great cover of just Composite Superman. So I was very close.
Very weird. Very weird. Yeah. Yes. So I also, just side note, I really like the stretching sound effects on Elongated Man. I like my stretchy guys. I think I do prefer a Plastic Man to an Elongated Man, but fun note there is that Plastic Man is mentioned by name. He's never seen in the show. He's never drawn. He's never in the background. So we never see what a Plastic Man would look like in the Justice League, but it's only Elongated Man. And again, I think Jeremy Piven was the perfect casting for that character. Because he's like, I can do this. I am also a detective. So I'm like Batman and Plastic Man rolled into one. But he's not as good of a detective as Batman. No. He says that all the time. Squeaky wheel. It's another sort of like, not a throwaway character, but a bit of a losery character. And I think even in comic books, Elongated Man has had a lot of opportunities to showcase the heroism, and it's there. But he's mostly a bit of a punching bag and a bit of a, oh, everybody's invited. All right, well, Elongated Man is here. Haha, what a silly, goofy guy, So usually, but yeah.
My first exposure to Elongated Man was in the Justice League Europe run, because they had the two books going concurrently, Justice League America and Justice League Europe. And that's one of my... If I had to have a complaint about this episode, is boy, it would have been nice to have thrown Ted Kord, Blue Beetle in there alongside with Booster.
I know.
Because those two, when you get Beetle and Booster together, and again, we had J.M. DeMatteis on talking about the episode that he wrote. I was like, oh, why didn't they bring him in? And I know Dan Reba has said before they couldn't use Blue Beetle for some reason.
Yes. But it was a rights thing. And it's a great bromance. And I remember watching this episode and thinking, oh, I wonder if they replaced his normal best friend bromantic character, Ted, with the robot. But nope, that little robot, Skeets, is also from the very, very first appearance of Booster Gold in comics in 1986. I love that he's voiced by Billy West. It's perfect. Billy West, he's known as Fry from Futurama, who is also from the future and becomes best friends with a robot. And now he's voicing a robot who becomes best friends with a guy from the future. They're kind of losery guys. I mean, he has a lot of good lines, but when he gets sucked out of the black hole and he goes, my gosh, it was full of stars. Like if he had a 2001 A Space Odyssey, this little robot that had the Space Odyssey, moment was so great. And earlier in the episode that's just Billy West. I think he's so underratedly funny. He's so funny.
Hilarious.
But earlier in the episode when Booster Gold saves the kid's ants,
then
Skeets goes, "Sir, you saved those insects. Yay." That was so funny.
It was great.
Wonderful, encouraging best friend robot, really great. Really great.
And then at one point, though, he says, I got nothing.
Oh, that was the best. Booster Gold looking to him, he's a real character. He's not just a robot that is just going to, he's not a parrot. I've got nothing after Booster Gold is at rock bottom.
Yep.
So funny. Really, probably the best line of the episode. Just genuinely funny stuff. Yeah.
I'd like to know which animator decided to make when Booster Gold's helping the pregnant woman in the back of the ambulance deliver the baby. We see Skeets kind of pacing like a father outside.
Funny.
That was like that little touch there.
Funny.
I'd love to know which animator's like, oh, let's have him do this, because that was brilliant.
Yes.
And the two EMTs who get sucked in, I was wondering why we didn't see them get sucked out, get blown out.
Yeah, they died, Susan. They straight up died. You're right. You caught an animation error, but actually it has a horrific meaning. They died, Susan. They were lost to this black hole.
I don't believe it.
Spit out on the other end of the universe.
No, say it ain't so.
We didn't see them when the tanker truck got shot back out. They were inside the tanker truck. They'd taken refuge inside, so they're fine.
In the cab. Yeah, that makes sense. I know it's funny that if they're going to go to the trouble of animating the birds coming back out so that the kids know that the birds are safe, but not those human beings, I'm like, they messed up. It must have cost too much money to animate these two guys. Really
the paramedics.
Fun.
The paramedics. R.I.P.
We should mention, because we
sure.
talked about Billy West, but the rest of the voice cast, we talked about Tom Everett Scott as Booster, Billy West as Skeets. We had Lori Loughlin as Dr. Tracy Simmons. Chris Cox, who was voicing Shining Knight in the later episodes, stepped in to voice Captain Adam in this one. Jeremy Piven as the elongated man. Kath Soucie as both the young boy and the pregnant woman, showing Kath's versatility there.
I'll say.
And then obviously we have Phil Lamar, Carl Lumley, Kevin Conroy, and Susan Eisenberg as their Justice League characters for the mainstays. That's a pretty solid voice cast, I'd say.
And they were all I have to say, they were a little condescending with Booster, all of them.
Yes.
I mean, they were just like, Wonder Woman was so compassionate with Hawk and Dove, and here she is with Booster, and it's like that no one had time for Booster.
I know.
It was just
I think Diana was maybe the most stressed out of all of them to try to defend Diana a little bit, because I'm here on the podcast with Susan. But when she goes, not you, him, she's right in the thick of it. This is an emergency situation. John Jones
again, what is the emergency?
The emergency, some big wizard guy. I don't know, something,
His name is Mordru, Susan. For the love of God, you were there.
I know.
Mordru.
I have it written down with a big question mark.
Yeah.
Like, who's Mordru?
Who is this?
I
He's
think
like
she's
a
still
Felix
shell-shocked.
Faust.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's like
All
a
right.
Felix Faust, sorcerer, evil guy, wizard, like an evil Merlin, something like that.
Yeah.
No, not really that important. But Diana was a little, stressed in that moment and needed Elongated Man for something, right? And it ended up, Wonder Woman was right, because Elongated Man ends up saving the day later, which is great.
Yeah.
But and Batman, we know, has no patience for Booster
None.
Gold.
But even I was about to say even Carl.
Even Carl.
Who's the sweetest guy.
Yeah.
Even Martian Manhunter, who is so patient. He was short-tempered with him.
Their exchange in the beginning, I think, sets up exactly what you're describing, sets up why nobody has patience for him, why everybody sort of rolls their eyes at Booster Gold. I mean, he's a powerful hero. He's somebody who has superpowers, and it's good that he's a part of the Justice League. It's good. But John Jones says, that ambition or those priorities, that's why you're on the sidelines.
Right.
He tells him to his face, because he goes, hey, I want fame. I want to be an A-lister. I want to be able to be, right in the middle of it and have my picture taken and save the day. Well, you really shouldn't be focusing on that. Yeah, you're right. Also money. I want to be paid. He wants endorsement deals. That's what his thing is.
It sounded a little like Flash.
Absolutely. I mean, he is in many ways way less heroic than Flash.
Yes.
But it's this episode that highlights that, like, every once in a while, a scenario will pop up where Booster Gold is the guy, and he can be heroic for the right reasons, and he can do it and not have any recognition, and at the end of the day be okay. But he is even more immature than Wally, and more immature than the Flash or any of these other younger heroes that we might be, that we might know. So I also think that another highlight for me of this episode is that at the end, the story still rewards Booster by having this scientist say, I know you, I see you. And in a way, it's like, that's all you need. And it's a great reminder. It's a great life lesson. Look, no matter what our goals are, and if we want to be rich and famous, and if we want this or that, at the end of the day, you really kind of only need one person. And if you have one person, if you're lucky enough to have one person, then usually other things you can let go, and it's a little bit easier. And I liked earlier in the episode, towards in the third act, when Dr. Simmons says these other characters aren't here, just laying it out flat. Like
that was great.
That's a great thing about Booster Gold is she goes, you're mentioning all these other characters and how great they are and how heroic they are. They're just not here right now. Mm-hmm. You're the only one who can do this. So do it.
Yep. It was great.
It's really motivating. It really is. It's really weirdly motivating. So I like that the show still rewards Booster, even though he's going to get yelled at by Batman, even though the rest of the league might still disrespect him right now, at least. It feels like he's growing. It feels like he's learning because of the fact that he did all of this without any recognition. And he's a little bummed, but he's okay with that fact. And it's the show that goes, okay, but here's Dr. Simmons, and maybe you guys can have a dinner. And maybe if Booster Gold connects with somebody like Dr. Simmons, then maybe he'll mature, I guess, and be a little bit less concerned with the stuff that he's concerned with. I don't know. He really should just listen to her and listen to Skeets more. These two characters are great. They're great friends. They're great characters, and they're much smarter than him. So, yeah.
I think the point about Wally, too, Wally had Barry as a mentor growing up. We don't see that in this series, obviously, but Booster did not have a mentor. You know, he was Kid Flash for the longest time before he became Flash, which I think is why Wally has that underlying responsibility and kind of knows what to do when stuff goes south. So,
and then when this character Booster Gold shows up in comic books, he pretty soon links up with another kind of like a young bachelor guy, Blue Beetle. And Booster Gold and Blue Beetle become this duo, and it's almost like they're constantly at their bachelor pad, and they're just doing dumb, immature guy stuff, and they don't really grow. But even though they make each other better and they're a great friendship, it's those other moments, these scenarios where like the killer of Superman shows up, then Booster Gold gets real serious. Or years later in this comic book universe, there's a big time travel problem that needs to be solved. And it's Booster Gold who steps up and he does it. And he does it without any of the fame, without any of the recognition. I mean, listen, a great moment, a very tragic moment in comic book history is when the first Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, becomes hurt and paralyzed by the Joker. And then she becomes a wheelchair user, but she was Batgirl. And then she becomes a different type of superhero with the identity of Oracle. And she helps all the other superheroes because she's very technologically, brilliant, and she's able to help in a lot of the ways, the way like John Jones is helping in this show at the Watchtower, sort of, sending out assignments and helping people and hacking into stuff. And in comic books, that was a real tragic moment. And a lot of comic book readers, DC fans, they know about that moment. It's really, really tough. So again, in this comic book series I mentioned earlier, where Booster Gold is able to travel through time, he goes back in time and tries to prevent that from happening. And it's the Joker who ends up, the Joker was the one who shot and paralyzed Barbara Gordon. He fights the Joker. The Joker hits him with a crowbar, beats him senseless. And Booster Gold goes back into time travel. And he basically says, I'm going back. And he keeps trying again and again and again and failing every single time, getting beaten within an inch of his life. And he keeps doing it after other allies of his that understand time travel more. They're telling him, you cannot change this. Booster, it's final. You can't go back in time with the intention of trying to change something in the past, because then you'll never have that reason to go back. Just that those time travel rules where you can't change the past. And it's very hard. And it's a metaphor for how we deal with our own histories and our own traumas. But he keeps trying over and over and over again, knowing he's not going to get any recognition for it. And if he succeeds, no one will ever know what he did, right? It'll just be another normal day for Batgirl. But he does it for that heroic reason, and ultimately still fails, and ultimately still goes on and does other superheroic stuff. So that's the kind of thing that I think is at the character's best. That's what Booster Gold can offer. And at the character's worst, he's just a fun distraction. You're just reading a comic book, and it's really fun and silly and goofy. And maybe somewhere in the middle is this episode where you go, okay, it's really fun, it's really silly. You can get some great conversations out of it like we're having, but it is not the end-all be-all best episode of Justice League. It's not the one that, proves like we need these heroes and look what they can do and they've all come together. It's not that kind of story. It's a silly Booster Gold story. So, Susan, have we made it so that you enjoy this episode anymore, or are you still right there at that base level of I wanted more Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman?
No, I actually now I want more Booster Gold.
Mission accomplished then.
I love the Barbara Gordon story. I love
Yeah,
that. That's so
really.
touching. That's so
Very
moving.
touching.
Yeah,
It is,
to quote the 10th Doctor, fixed point in time. I'm so sorry. Because there are certain things,
Absolutely.
as Doctor Who points out, that are fixed points that hinge everything else around it, and you can't change those fixed points. The paralyzing of Barbara Gordon was a fixed point in time.
It was a fixed point in time. She was destined to become the Oracle. She needed to become the Oracle for whatever reasons and help heroes in other different ways. But yeah, again, would something like Booster Gold in Justice League Unlimited, would he have eventually gotten a story like that if the series had kept going and going for many seasons? I think so. But for now, we just get to end with Booster turning frustratedly for the last time. I'm not Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And it's Dr.
So
Simmons
great.
like, hey, I'm messing with you.
But for those of you who like the character, Tom Everett Scott and Billy West do come back in Batman Brave and the Bold, voicing the same character. So for those of you who like this episode, then you check out that episode of Brave and the Bold, because that's another way to get some more Booster Gold.
Absolutely. That's another great show with Diedrich Bader as Batman, much more comedic. It still had some great moments of drama, but that's a fun, silly, it's almost like an Adam West Batman style show.
Yeah.
And I think that these actors bringing this version of Booster Gold and Skeets to that show just worked perfectly. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for reminding me, James. Yeah, I might go watch that episode now. That's real fun.
The more you know. That's why I'm here. Yeah, but it's so great that you're able to come on and cover this episode with us. We mentioned some of the stuff that you do when you're, not
in life.
Joining us, right? So tell people a little bit more about Heroes Reforged and about Dork Souls podcast before you go.
You got it. Those are my two main shows that I'm doing right now. Heroes Reforged is a show that I do with my pals Adam Hlavik and Agustin Rios, and when we're lucky enough to get great guests like a Susan Eisenberg, we have had some really great interviews recently on our podcast, but it's just on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So go check out Heroes Reforged. We're constantly talking about superhero stuff, constantly. And then the other show that I do is called the Dork Souls podcast, where me and my friend, who's a stand-up comedian, Lisa Wallen, we get together, and also we sometimes have guests, but usually we just dork out just like this. She describes it as two dorky souls getting together and kind of being our authentic selves. But Dork Souls is also a play on words for a very popular video game that I've never played called Dark Souls. So that's where that name comes from. She's a big video gamer, and I'm obviously more of the comic book guy. So we kind of mix and match our nerdiness a little bit. So yeah, that's very fun. Thank you guys both again so much for having me. This hour absolutely flew by, and I'm so glad.
And also, Hector, how do people, like, if the fans are just as enamored by you as, we are, how do they find you? How do they, track you down?
Social media?
And follow you? Yeah. Like,
absolutely.
Tell us where you are.
Sure. I feel like the best places we can check are Instagram, and I'm also on TikTok. I think on both places, my name is Hector is Funny. So it should be pretty easy to find. Although on this episode, I'm Hector is a fan of Susan. That's my name in this episode.
No, a fan of Booster Gold.
I really am a fan of Booster Gold.
I love it.
And I'm so glad I was able to share some scripture from the good book of DC Comics and talk about my love of Booster and ask you guys, have you heard about Booster Gold? And and some of his, his adventures and everything. But yeah, really, this is all just a great celebration of this show. The writers, the producers, the voice cast, everybody on Justice League Unlimited, like, really made one of the most enduring, wonderful animated series, and it's such a big part of my life. So if I'm sure that you guys get this all the time, but like anytime you have folks on, be sure to tell them from the fan community, like, thank you so much, thanks for making the show, it was so great. And I would be lying if I didn't say that a big chunk of my love of Booster Gold, as much as I love the comic books, as much as I love, some of his other appearances here and there, it really does just come from this episode, because he's such a loser. And that Green Lantern joke is so good. But in the end, he's he does the right thing for the right reasons. So there you go.
Well, thank you for doing this. Like I like we said earlier, when we saw each other in Tampa, I said, you're just, because we love to have the fans on. and people who are in the know. And you fit that bill perfectly.
That's me, baby.
To a T. So thank you for doing this. And hopefully we can have you back because
anytime.
This was so much fun. Stick around. We're gonna sign off, but stick around, okay?
You got it.
All right.
I'll be here.
Thank you, Hector.
Thank you very much for being on. There he goes. My goodness. It's like someone turned a comic book buzzsaw on and just vroom. I know. I didn't have to, I had notes here. I'm like, I don't have to say anything about that because Hector covered it. Oh, Hector covered that. Fantastic. I don't have to say, I'm scratching out notes. This was great. It's like having two of me on the podcast.
It so was. Oh my God, that is perfect. It was like having two of you.
Composite Hector. That's what we'll call it. Like composite.
Oh my God. Brilliant. Composite Hector. That's awesome. And and I learned a lot. So that was fascinating. And that's one of the gifts of doing this, podcast is I learned so much. And now I'm a fan of Booster Gold. Bring on Booster Gold. More Booster Gold. So that was delightful. And we thank, Hector for joining us and bringing his pearls of wisdom to the show. And we hope everyone enjoyed that. Wow, that was a good one.
I'm just double checking to make sure we'd covered everything we wanted to cover. Buffy, check. Star Trek, check. Guiding Light. Yeah, okay, we hit all the big ones. All right, we're good.
Good one, James. And I want to do a special shout out to the people who took the time to leave reviews. I looked at the Apple account, so I don't know for those of you who did it for Spotify. I don't know. I'm sure you have, and I thank you also. But the reviews have been so kind and thoughtful and sweet, and I appreciate people taking the time to do that. I shared them all with James. I was just giddy as I was reading them. So thank you for doing that and for subscribing to the podcast and hopefully looking at our Patreon and doing all that stuff because, it really means a great deal to us.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And I'll give a quick shout out on those recent ones that Susan just sent me. We have TC in PA, gave us a lovely 5-star review, Mission Revisited. We've got M- I found if it's Feech, F-I-E-C-H, it looks like. Maybe it's Fletch, M. Fletch. Wonderful podcast for Justice League nostalgia. We appreciate that. Another 5-star review. We have Wit2687, a podcast worthy of the legendary series. Thank you very much for that. A 5-star review from Turbo Kitten 2.0. I wish I'd known about this sooner. Thank you. You know what? It doesn't matter when you found us, as long as you found us. We appreciate that. But the SKP machine left us a nice 5-star review, just said, excellent. I'm not going into all the details and reading each review. You can do that on your own, gentle listener. And Kendrick0278 said, hidden gem. Thank you, all of you for those reviews. And if you're listening right now and haven't had the chance to leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're hearing this, go ahead and do so. We may very well give you a shout out in the next episode.
And what do we want to? And now we're on YouTube.
Yes. So my executive producer of my radio show, Joey V, helps me out with this one too. And he said, you know what? I'm going to throw the audio up on YouTube. So it's just a static image of our Justice League Revisited logo. But that's a new way for people to hear. And we had several people find us on YouTube and like, oh my gosh, I just stumbled upon this and I didn't realize you were doing this show. So that must be like Christmas morning to have someone, because I know if I find a series that I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I go back, there's seasons before this one. So that's great. So if you are just wanting to listen to us in a different way, maybe you're at work and you can pop up YouTube on your computer and have it minimize the screen so you can just hear it in the background. You can now listen to us on YouTube. So check it out there. Just look for Justice League Revisited.
Yeah, well done. And thank you for mentioning the names. That was brilliant. Thank you for doing that.
No, happy
so that's the business portion of this. And how do people find you, James? The people that are not the people that you owe money to. Just
no, I'm still hiding from them. But if for those of you not looking to collect a bill, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Geek to Me Radio. You can also find me on Threads, same handle. Threads has been blowing up lately. I've got a smaller following on Threads than I do on either Instagram or Twitter. and I get so much more interaction. So for all of you who have found me on Threads and been liking my stuff and sharing it and interacting with me there, thank you very much. So the more you interact with me, the more I appreciate it. Facebook.com/GeekToMeRadio. And we go live every Sunday night. So talking about YouTube, find and subscribe to Geek to Me Radio on YouTube, because we go live every Sunday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, with a live show. You may have just heard Joaquim DeSantos was on my show a couple Sundays ago. We had dynamic music partners on my show. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming as we draw into this last quarter of 2026. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening, for those of you who have, and please subscribe online.
Perfect.
What about you, Susan?
Well, I am findable at Susan Eisenberg 1, the number 1, on mostly Instagram and Blue Sky, but mostly Instagram for the for Wonder Woman stuff, but both. I try to do both, and I have a website that's SusanEisenbergVoice.com, and you can go there, and there's an email section, so you can always reach out to me via email. But again, thank you for listening and for supporting us and for leaving us kind reviews and doing all that stuff, because it really does mean the world to us. So please stay tuned. We've got some great stuff coming, and the conversation will continue.